And they asked him, what would you rather have, a traditional romantic relationship or a hookup? The vast majority of college guys and girls said they would much rather have a traditional romantic relationship than a hookup. But they were twice as likely to hook up as go on a first date. They knew what they wanted, but they just didn't know how to get there. And they asked, well, how do you feel after a hookup? 2% said they felt wanted. 5% said they felt proud. 2% said they felt wanted. So it's like they knew this is not satisfying me, but I just don't know of any other way. And so our job is to show them the other way.
Jason, Evert, thank you for sitting down for exclusives.
Thank you for having me.
So I've followed you and your wife's, Kristalina's, work for, I think, over a decade. It's been important in my life, and I know you've reached millions of young people with your work. Let's start off for people who are just getting to know you, the founder of Chastity Project. Tell me a little bit about the Everts and about Chastity Project and your lifelong mission.
Well, we live in Arizona. We've been blessed with 8 kids. We've been married for 20 years. And so for the past 25 years, been kind of traveling around the world speaking on chastity at high schools and universities. We talked about 100,000 kids a year in their schools. And then after the talks, I'll just tell the kids, hey, if you guys need to hang out afterwards and talk, I'll be here to listen. And then I just wait, and we gave that invitation to high school in New York, and the kids formed a line 7 hours long.
Wow.
And was there till 5:30 at night. We had to cut off the line to get to the next talk, and they would just come and just pour their hearts out about the cutting and the addiction and the abortion and just everything, because finally someone's willing to listen. And so I've learned so much from having 25 years of those conversations of what's making them make certain choices. How do you take them out of that lifestyle? How do you remind them that they can start over? And so
wow.
It's really been a joy. People think I have some hard job trying to sell chastity to teenagers, but it's like giving out ribeye steaks in Somalia. It's like this starving culture that was made for truth and love, and then you finally just walk in and say, here it is. So it's good news. It's not some fear-based shame approach. It's just, what are the demands of authentic human love? And I find that the young people are more than eager to rise up for that challenge.
Okay, so 25 years, 100,000 kids, maybe on average a year. Yeah. We're talking over 2 million. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. So tell us first, for folks listening, the word chastity.
Yeah.
It's, I think different people have different connotations for it, different definitions for it. Yeah. What is chastity, and who should be chaste?
Yeah, well, it's got a lot of baggage associated with the word, and we recognize that. John Paul II once wrote a book, and he said he believes the word chastity needs to be rehabilitated. And so we've taken that to be part of our mission. So like our website is chastity.com. It's not a word we want to be like, oh, let's just hide that word because it's got too much baggage. We want to bring it up in light. What does that word mean? It's not celibacy, which means the state of not being married. It's not abstinence, which is just the absence of sex. So if you told me that guy is abstinent, it doesn't really tell you a lot about him. Like maybe he's a virtuous guy and he's waiting for marriage, or maybe he just can't find a date, or maybe he's an incel, or maybe he's dead. There's lots of reasons why someone could be abstinent, but chastity isn't so much the absence of something as it's the presence of purity. And so the function of chastity is to free you to love and to free you to know if you're authentically being loved. And so you break that down. Okay, well, how does chastity, purity free you to love? Well, if I can't say no as a man to my sexual impulses, then saying yes to them means absolutely nothing. And so if a man does not have self-mastery prior to getting married, I don't think he'll ever really make love to his wife. I think he'll use his wife's body as an outlet for what he thinks of as his sexual needs. And I think a woman's heart can perceive the difference. And so in order to make a gift of yourself, you need that self-mastery. And so chastity is that integration of your sexual desires, not shaming them, oh, sex is bad and dirty, but it's this beautiful gift. And so it teaches me that the more responsible I feel for this woman, the more real love there is there. And so chastity, it frees you to love. And then it frees you to know if you're being loved. Well, how does it do that? I think of a girl I met at a public high school in Texas, and she came up and she's dating this controlling, possessive, abusive older guy, just treats her like garbage. And I said, well, just break up with him. You deserve so much better, sweetheart. And she said, I can't just break up. I've given him my virginity, my reputation, my friends. I've given him everything. I can't just let go now. And I said, look, I know it's hard, just tell him no more sex, watch what happens. And she said, okay, I'll do that. And she took off her necklace and gave it to me, and she said, he makes me wear this, he's so possessive and controlling. And I said, okay, I'll throw it away for you. And she left. Now, 5 minutes later, she comes back, just happy as can be. And she said, I dumped him. I said, well, that was quick. And she said, yeah, I told him no more sex, and he slammed his locker shut, and he threw a book at me. He said, where's your necklace? She said, I gave it to the chastity guy. So like, she just tested his love. Like, do you love me? Do you want me, or do you want the pleasure you're getting from me? And so that virtue of chastity liberated this young woman to know, is she being loved or simply being used? And so who should practice chastity? Everybody. It doesn't matter if you're single, even if you're married. I need to practice chastity as a married husband. And obviously that would look different than as a single person being abstinent, but it would also involve, I'm not looking at pornography. I'm not flirting with other girls. I'm, not, the way we plan our family is in accord with God's designs for human sexuality. And so it's not a virtue that ends in marriage, but a virtue that holds marriage together. It's that reverence for the gift of sexuality.
Now, you work with a lot of, in both religious and non-religious contexts. So your message is for everyone, whether they're whatever religious or no religious background. But in some religions, particularly the Catholic faith, I'm Catholic, as you know, you're Catholic. What does chastity mean for a priest?
Well, for him,
or
they practice that
in
celibacy, obviously, which is not getting married, but he still has to have that purity of heart. I mean, when you get married, just like when you get ordained, it doesn't mean that, oh great, all other women in the world are no longer sexually appealing or attractive to me. It's not about erasing your sexual desires, because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that like sexual desire is lust. And as long as you experience sexual desire, then you're lusting, and that's a sin. And if you think that those two are synonymous, you'll always think you're failing at chastity because you could never finally get rid of these sexual desires. But that's not the goal. The goal isn't just to eliminate sexual attraction, but to order these attractions according to the demands of authentic human love. And so as a priest, he could see a parishioner in his parish who's a beautiful woman, and he can respond, well, wow, that's a beautiful woman. He can see her in all of that. But okay, am I placing her sexual value above her personal value, or am I placing her personal value above the sexual value? It's not about eliminating or choosing one or the other. It's just a proper ordering of that. And so in the way he interacts with women, what he does in the rectory, on the internet, when he's alone, all of this is the integration of that virtue of chastity.
How did you start Chastity Project? What inspired you to spend your whole life encouraging people to pursue authentic love?
I think it was two major things. One was when I was in college, I did 3 years of sidewalk counseling. So standing in front of an abortion clinic, meeting women who are having an abortion literally in 45 minutes. And after 3 years of doing that, I really just felt late. And I was there offering them, prayer, but support, hey, maybe financially, maybe adoption could be an option, just trying to be there at that last moment. But I just felt late. I felt like, why am I meeting this woman 45 minutes before her abortion? Why couldn't I have met her when she was 15 years old? Because maybe if she learned about chastity and real love then, she never would have dated this guy to begin with and be in this difficult situation today. So it almost felt like I was endlessly throwing sandbags on like the banks of a flooded river when there was a dam broken upstream a quarter mile. And I could sit here for the rest of my natural life and throw sandbags, but it's not going to change the flow of the traffic. And so instead of focusing so much on the supply of abortion, why don't I look at the demand for it and where that's coming from, which is unchastity. And so I figured if I can just go upstream and help plug the dam, then it doesn't matter how much supply of abortion there is. If there isn't the demand for it, the problem will take care of itself. And so I realized that, I didn't really have that gift. Here and there, thanks be to God, save a baby. I remember one nun came by one morning and she's like, well, can I give it a try? And I'm like, yeah, give it a shot, sister. And she saved like 10 babies in one morning. And I was like, what did you say? Like what's the formula? But it really wasn't something she said. It was just who she was. It was a charism, like a gift God gave her to build up, the church. But it wasn't my gift. And at the same time as doing this, I was leading high school retreats. And on the retreats, the kids would really open up to me about all the struggles they were going through and their parents' disastrous marriage and their addictions and broken hearts and all this stuff. And I realized they have no formation in human love. All they know is what they're not supposed to do. Don't do this and don't do that. But they don't know what they are supposed to do in these relationships. And at this time, I was learning John Paul II's book, Love and Responsibility. And I felt like this feels like an antidote to so much of this hurt and confusion. And I just started sharing some of that antidote with the young people or at the women at this clinic. And it seemed like the light bulb was turning on. And I realized this is it. This is the calling that I've been given, to share the good news of God's plan for human sexuality. That even if you've made mistakes, so many women think, well, I'm not a virgin anymore. How does this apply to me? But helping them understand that your value as a woman does not come from your virginity. Your sexuality has value because of you. You're the gift. And if they think that, oh, well, my virginity's gone, so my value is gone, it could lead to years of just empty relationships because they think they don't deserve better. And so it's such a joy to be able to share this gift with people, just because it's not about, as I had said, shame and fear tactics and guilt trips and all that. It's just the demands of authentic human love.
So it was being pro-life, really, and seeing the crisis of abortion playing out on the sidewalks in front of abortion clinics, and you're like, how did we get here? That inspired you to do this amazing ministry now for over 2 decades. What inspired you to be pro-life?
I would just say my love for children, I would say, love for women, and just realizing how much better they deserve than this. Because, yesterday was my birthday, tomorrow is my daughter's birthday. Thank you very much. But I remember yesterday I left the gym, I was just in a great mood, and I was getting ready to go home and open presents with the kids, and we're just talking to God, and just like, thank you for the gift of life. Like what a gift it is just to be able to live, and to be able to help other people to receive that gift. It's just the most fundamental blessing that God bestows upon us. And so it isn't just about saving the babies, though, because after years of conversations with women who are in that moment, they don't want that. Abortion is something no woman wants. This is, even the most staunch pro-choice advocates, and you really, that day, that's not something, they don't want to be there. They don't. And I think we just need to create a culture in which they don't have to feel like they need to be there.
So in the last reported year, there were almost 1 million abortions, 1 million deaths of boys and girls by abortion. And according to research, even from the leading pro-abortion research institute, the Guttmacher Institute, kind of like an arm of Planned Parenthood, 86% of women who have abortions are single or unmarried. I should say some of them have boyfriends or cohabitating, but they are unmarried. Explain how you see lack of marriage culture even, helping or creating the abortion crisis.
Well, I think unchastity is the fuel of the entire abortion industry that isn't getting addressed enough, that we're so focused on that last minute effort. Because the numbers you're throwing out, 9 out of 10 abortions are to unwed mothers. And you think of, okay, well, how did she end up in that situation? Well, you look at the unwed mothers, and I saw one stat recently, it said 70% of teen pregnancies is to a girl who comes from a fatherless home. It's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Where's dad? Because when dad isn't around, they say typically what happens is the boys get guns and the girls get strollers. And this is what happens.
Or abortions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so when the dad isn't around, maybe that's the deeper issue that we need to start looking at. Where are these men who are going to take their pleasure but won't take their responsibility? I saw the podcast that you did in the Whatever podcast recently, where you're talking to that one gentleman I felt so bad for, that was talking about like, well, hey, if I want to have 100 kids, I can be a father to 100 kids. It's like, no, like that's not fatherhood, that's sperm donor. That's very different. That's breeding children. That's not being a father. And he talks about, polyamory and all this stuff. And, the problem with this polyamory is not that you love too many people, but that you just don't love any of them. Because love is a gift of self. It's not a loan. It's like me giving you, hey, Lila, I gave you this gift card to a coffee shop, and I want to give it to her next. It's like, well, wait a minute, who gets the gift? And so we need to re-educate, especially young people, on what human love is supposed to look like. And I don't think it's that hard to do, because it's written on their hearts. One boy came to me once, he said, I know what you mean about divorce. He said, my dad's on his 9th marriage. The boy's like 16 years old, and you'd think they'd be jaded and uninterested in love after the dumpster fire that was their parents' marriage, but I find they're remarkably receptive to this message. Upwards of more than 2/3 of high school students who have had sex privately admit that they wish they waited longer. It was kind of a disappointment. The majority of high school students are virgins, and most who aren't wish they waited longer, which means you've got a pretty ripe majority of young people willing to hear that there's a better way.
That's a very fascinating statistic, and I don't think a lot of people know that. You said the majority of high school students are virgins.
Yeah.
Is that a new phenomenon? And what do you think is behind that? Because the message at large in the culture is that premarital sex is not a big deal.
Yeah.
In fact, you're weird if you don't have it,
Yeah.
and you should have it in order to see if you even want to be in a long-term relationship with somebody.
Yeah. Well, the Centers for Disease Control has been tracking this since about 1991. And so for the last 30 years, the rates of sexual activity among high school kids has been constantly going down. So the majority of American high school students are virgins, and it's a continual trend. Now, the media would portray the opposite of just like all these kids are, they can't control themselves and they're not going to be open to a message of abstinence. No, it's consistently going down. So what's behind the numbers? Well, they ask the kids, like, why are you choosing abstinence? Are you afraid of getting pregnant? Are you afraid of getting AIDS? You're going to get a disease? Like, why are you afraid? Why are you being abstinent? What was interesting is those reasons, fear of pregnancy and disease, was at the bottom of the list for why the kids are choosing to be abstinent. The number one reply is against my religious and moral values. Number one reply nationwide from the teenagers themselves. Now, we need to be careful not to read too much into the data of thinking, an increase of abstinence is an increase of virtue. Not necessarily. It could also be an increase of pornography, where guys are like, well, why do I even need a girlfriend when I could just hop on the internet? And she doesn't have any needs. She's always available. She'll never reject me. And no commitment. Hey, baby. And so you got a lot of girls like, sorry, I haven't been asked out on a date in 10 years. And she's 32 years old. Well, where's the guy? And the way that I look at what's going on right now of many marriageable young women having difficulty finding a solid spouse, because I meet them constantly on my travels. If you look at what happened in China with the one-child policy, they predominantly aborted the female babies because, the men can carry on the family name and take care of you and, you get old and, the prestige of having a male baby. And so the female babies got aborted at a disproportionate rate of tens of millions. And now these young people have come of age where it's time to marry. And the guys are looking around. And where are these potential brides? Well, they were aborted, 23 years ago. And I think a very similar thing has happened in American culture and Western civilization with pornography. Pornography has essentially aborted a generation of men.
Wow.
Where we've got 27-year-old guy, but affectively, he's a 13-year-old. He's still playing video games. He's not even interested in settling down and raising a family because he's got his apps and he's got his stuff. And so it leaves many women thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I not desirable enough? It's like, honey, if you lived 80 years ago, you'd probably have 5 kids by now. But the culture we're in has made marriage such a low priority that it's like, why would I even want to go down that road?
How much do you blame pornography for that? There's obviously been a proliferation in pornography with the internet internet age, but there's a lot of other factors going on there. So what would you say are the factors at play for that man at 27 years old or 35 years old who never grows up, who's in his mother's basement, or maybe he's successful, maybe he is doing successful stuff, but he is kind of the player. He doesn't want to settle down. He doesn't want to get married.
Yeah, pornography is a big piece. It's caused a lot of effeminacy in men, and what I mean by that, medieval philosopher Thomas Aquinas said, effeminacy is when a man refuses to let go of what is pleasurable in order to do what is arduous or difficult. That makes a man effeminate. And so, so that means you could have a guy who externally looks very machismo, very Andrew Tate, he's got the muscles, mixed martial arts, he's got the fancy cars, he's got the beautiful women, but he refuses to let go of what's pleasurable in order to do what's arduous and difficult. In this world where the father figure is absent, a lot of guys want to gravitate to a masculine feature, role model. It's like, wow, this guy is speaking. I'm like, I'll go in this. And it's a hyper masculinization that at the end of the day leaves you deeply effeminate, not feminine, which is a perfection. It's a good thing. Not same-sex attraction. That's a totally different question. We're talking about effeminacy, where externally I could be very machismo, but I have a disordered attachment to the pleasure and an aversion from what is difficult. And so pornography kind of infests a man's heart with that type of effeminate nature. And so that's a big piece. Why other people aren't getting married? I think it's because their own parents' marriages were such a mess. They're cohabiting not because they don't value marriage, but because they actually do value it, but they don't think it's a realistic possibility for them. And it's like, man, I saw your wedding pictures and you guys looked all in love, and now look at the mess that you guys are. I'm not dumb. I mean, when my wife was single, she vowed that she would never get a divorce. And how would she achieve that? Well, she decided, I'm just never going to get married. Because I've seen, I mean, how naive could you be to think that, oh, that's going to last forever? Oh, no. She saw the infidelity in her family and her parents and her grandparents, everything. And so she said, I'm going to protect myself by just staying outside of marriage. And so I think we've got to heal that and realize, well, hey, don't you think you can do better than your parents? You know, maybe that's not the bar. You know, maybe you can learn stuff the hard way, and realized, okay, they were the red flags. My mom didn't pay attention to them, thinking marriage is going to fix this guy. 8 years down the road, with problems 10 times as worse. And so part of it's coming from pornography, part from broken families. There's a lot of different streams leading into this big river, so to speak.
There's a particular, I think, attraction to familiarity, where if something is familiar, you raised and your parents' marriage is broken, or you're raised without a father, you kind of are comfortable with what's familiar, even with what's familiar is bad. And so that's where these generational cycles can come into play. Do you see that in your work? Do you see generational cycles? You use that language to talk about kind of carrying around intergenerational wounds or traumas and the healing that needs to be done.
Yeah, and what we try to do is tap into their desire to make it end with them. Like, you saw it in your grandparents, you saw it in your parents. Like, is the real goal to just give up and be like, I'm not even gonna try love because I'm just gonna fail at it? Like, what if it could end here? Like, what if you could set up a new series of dominoes in a different direction for the generations to come? That, 50, 60 years from now, your grandkids could be like, look at grandma. Look at grandma and grandpa still flirting and they're 90 years old. Like, I want that one day. Because I got to see that in my grandparents. They're married for 67 years. They had 10 kids and their names were Joseph and Mary. And it's like, you can't be, and they would flirt with each other all the time. I remember walking to the kitchen, my grandma's mixing something up. My grandpa walks in, he's feeling kind of frisky, and he walks over and he kind of slaps her in the thigh. And he's like, hi. He's like, my name is Joe. And she looks at him and she's like, I know. I'm like, they're like 100 years old and they're flirting. Like, that's what I want. And then when she died, I was right next to him at her casket, and they're about to close the coffin for the last time. And he's just trying to get closer, and he's kind of just real weak, and he's kind of shaking. He just leans over and he just gave her one kiss on the nose, and he said, bye, babe. And I saw that, I'm like, that's it. Like, that's what I want. I want a love stronger than death, but how do you get there from here when we live in a culture where more people hook up than even hold hands? But if we can just remind the young people, that's what you want. And the young people know it. They did this huge study of college students in America. Kinsey Institute actually is behind this research. And they asked them, what would you rather have, a traditional romantic relationship or a hookup? The vast majority of college guys and girls said they would much rather have a traditional romantic relationship than a hookup. But they were twice as likely to hook up as go on a first date. They knew what they wanted, but they just didn't know how to get there. And they asked, well, how do you feel after a hookup? 2% said they felt wanted. 5% said they felt proud. 2% said they felt wanted. So it's like they knew this is not satisfying me, but I just don't know of any other way. And so our job is to show them the other way.
So what do you think that the hookup culture today and the confusion today around that and the lack of formation today, yes, you mentioned pornography and broken families, but what is the, sex ed in schools is another factor. There are messages in media. Do you think that if we had better sex ed, as an example, would that make progress here? The common criticism from the pro-abortion side often, and even well-intentioned people, maybe not even on the pro-abortion side as well, the reason we have unwanted pregnancy and unhappy relationships is that there's not good sex ed. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Wow, how much time we got here? Yeah, good sex ed. Well, I wouldn't use the word sex ed. I would use education in human sexuality, because sex ed essentially is a biological education. It reduces sex to a biological act. And so as long as they're using safe sex, they're protected. It's like, well, wait a minute. This is why, to me, the whole language of safe sex is so terribly degrading to women, because it reduces a woman to her genitals. Because as long as she's not pregnant and as long as she didn't get herpes, she's safe. Really, like, well, she's bawling her eyes out to me about this broken sexual relationship. I mean, they used protection. Isn't she safe? Like, no, she's not safe, because sex is not a biological act. It's a human act. And so we need to personalize education in human sexuality instead of reducing it to a biological act. This is a personal act. It involves your heart, your soul, your mind, your future spouse, your family, the whole picture. And if all we're doing is giving them techniques for risk reduction, it's going to fall flat on its face, just like sex ed has in America. In fact, Washington Times had an article, and it just looked at the last 30 years of comprehensive sex education. And they said they couldn't find one single example of a school-based comprehensive sex ed program that was successful in decreasing teen pregnancy, STD rates, consistently increasing contraceptive use, or increasing abstinence. Not one in the last 30 years. The Centers for Disease Control did a meta-analysis, found the exact same thing. But there's this public perception. It's like, oh no, well, as long as we can talk about abstinence and give them contraception, and it's a win-win. But the biggest thing that I saw disprove that actually came from Planned Parenthood. They've got a journal called Perspectives on Sexual and Reproductive Health. And in there, Planned Parenthood actually said that the majority of high school pregnancies are caused by contraceptive failure, not by the failure to use contraception. It's like, pause button on that one. This is Planned Parenthood saying most teen pregnancies, high school pregnancies, are caused by contraceptive failure, not by the failure to use contraception. Okay, so if that's true, then who on earth would think that if we just give out more contraception, then abortion is going to go away? I mean, has that worked since in the 1970s? Look at the abortion rate. Look at the contraception rate. It's like literally throwing lighter fluid on a fire thinking you're going to extinguish it. Because if you're giving out more contraceptives, then you will have more people than ever having intercourse who don't expect to have babies. And this idea of like pregnancy is the thing to be avoided. I saw a contraceptive ad that called pregnancy the mother of all nightmares. But then if pregnancy is like a disease, contraception becomes the vaccine and abortion becomes the cure. And so it becomes this whole anti-life mentality before you even become one flesh. And so it's already setting your will against human life. And then when human life intrudes on your sexual plans, it's because the contraception fail. And so abortion needs to be the backup. And so what we do need is education in human sexuality, not passing out contraception that didn't work in Africa to stop AIDS, and it's not gonna work over here to curb the problem of unwed pregnancy and abortion. What's needed is to realize this is a behavioral lifestyle, and these kids need more than just risk reduction. They need to know what human love looks like.
So the rebuttal from many on the sort of, you could say, progressive left is that, well, you know, sex is not bad, of course, and you're not saying it's bad, but this is what, you know, this is kind of their train of thought. Sex is not bad, it's natural, and, you know, provided no one's being harmed and there's consent given, if you're old enough to consent, and they're gonna do it anyways. You know, people make mistakes, or they're not even making a mistake, they're just being a human being, human beings have sex. And so shouldn't we try to curb potential consequences of the inevitable? So there's kind of an inevitability argument. You hear this for teens too. They're just going to have sex. They're kids. Their hormones are raging. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, when I played college baseball, I can imagine if I like walked under the dugout and the coach is like, you know what, I don't want you to use steroids, but college athletes are going to do it anyway. And so we're going to have a basket of clean syringes over here in the dugout because guys are probably just going to do it anyway. It's basically telling me, okay, you expect I'm incapable of self-control. You're telling me I'm probably going to fail and staying away from that kind of stuff. And so telling kids, I expect you to fail, it sets the bar pretty darn low. When it comes to the natural consequence of sexuality, I mean, when people become one flesh, babies happen. And a baby is basically nature's way of saying, look, I'm permanent and you guys should be as well. And so the church's teaching on human sexuality is just so simple. It's just that, look, love, marriage, sex, and babies go together and in that order. That's it. And as soon as we culturally start flipping stuff around and disordering it or pulling things out, civilization itself begins to crumble. And so throwing contraception on the problem, teaching the kids the techniques, this is not going to eradicate the problem. It's just going to worsen it.
So some of this was predicted by Humanae Vitae 1968 encyclical in the Catholic Church about how contraception would actually help not only create more division between the sexes and the breakdown of marriage, but would lead to abortion eventually and other social ills. explain that for people, because your average person today is taught to think that contraceptives are in part not God's gift to humanity, but technology's gift to humanity. And there's even thinkers that I admire in many ways, like Dr. Jordan Peterson, who talks about the rise of the pill as some sort of freeing thing for women. I don't know if that was the language he used, the language of freedom, but as if it was a technological boon to women. So I think there is a view, even among many Christians, who think it's acceptable, people of faith, and certainly people in the secular space who think that contraceptives, maybe they're not good for teens because teens shouldn't be having sex, but generally speaking, at large, they do a service to humanity. Yeah, they do a disservice to humanity, in my opinion. And here's why. And I won't refer to any ecclesiastical documents. Let's look at Kinsey and what the Kinsey Institute actually said on this. And who's Kinsey, for those listening? Alfred Kinsey is a very broken individual. This was a man who was hailed as kind of like the pioneer of sex. He's kind of like the godfather of sex education in America. This is a guy who is an openly polyamorous, unfaithful man who did research of basically convicted sex criminals and took the research he found on their sex lives and projected that on the general American population, saying, look, this is what we really are at heart. And a lot of people didn't know, okay, wait a minute, is he giving us data from the average married couple? No, he's going into getting information from prisons. He was doing research that involved children in terms of sexual abuse that was happening to them. I mean, just a very broken individual, and his premises that, look, we're all on the outside look like we got it together, but deep down we're extremely sexually deviant beings. And that mentality ended up getting into the mainstream media, into the sex education sphere, and he founded this Kinsey Institute thing. Now, what was interesting is Kinsey Institute was part of that research study I mentioned earlier, where they looked at the sexual hookup culture in college campuses. And the most interesting thing I found in that study is they said, where's all this coming from? And what they said is, look, from an evolutionary biology perspective, within any species that reproduces, whichever sex has the longer reproductive rate tends to be more choosy about who their sexual partner is. And so for human beings, the woman has the longer reproductive rate. If she gets pregnant, that's not a 5-minute thing like it could be for the man. We're talking gestation, lactation, the whole 9 yards, years of her life invested because of one sexual act. And as a result, she tends to be more choosy with who she's going to bed with. But what the Kinsey Institute pointed out is that once contraception got onto the picture, women were given the reproductive rates of men. No longer would it be an 18-month or 5-year investment. It could be all of 10 and 15 minutes. And as a result, women no longer became so choosy with who they were going to bed with. And all of a sudden, we have this culture of promiscuity that exploded out of this, with contraception being the fuel behind this entire sexual revolution. This is not coming from Pope Paul VI. This is coming from the Kinsey Institute, saying contraception is the root of this. So some folks listening who are married will say, well, contraception in marriage must be fine then, because you're eliminating this thing about being choosy with your, sex partner, because this is my spouse now. So what's the big harm? And historically speaking, and you look at the proliferation of contraceptive use, it started, acceptability with it started in the early 20th century when some Christians, who before Christians, evangelicals or non-Catholics, Protestants and Catholics, were pretty lockstep united. The early reformers were very anti-contraception of all kinds, any kind. Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, they're all. But then in the 1920s, something happened. Walk us through what happened historically to make contraception more acceptable. Yeah, in the 1930s, the Lambeth Council, which is part of the Anglican Church, issued a document saying in rare extreme circumstances, contraception could be used within a Christian married couple. Protestantism did not react. Oh, great. No, the Southern Baptist, everyone was like up in arms. Like, this cannot even be happening. Within Christianity, we've got 1,900 years of consistent teaching that this is not God's plan for human sexuality. So initially the Protestants were not on board with it, but given a couple of decades, one by one, it all started slowly caving in, except for the Catholic Church saying no. And why? What's the big problem? You could look at it from a lot of different angles, but to keep it really simple, you look at a lot of the contraceptives. I mean, the birth control pill is a class 1 carcinogen, according to the World Health Organization. Am I going to put that in my wife's body? Well, what about Depo? What about this? I mean, look at the lawsuits against these companies. I mean, Depo-Provera is given to chemically castrate male sex offenders. It's given as punishment to them. I want to give that to my spouse or my teenage daughter. It's like, well, no. And what I've found
is that women don't want to contracept. They don't. They might want to be able to have intercourse without having babies, but they've never wanted to be at war with their own anatomy in order to accomplish that. And so, well, is there another alternative? Well, there's fertility awareness methods or natural family planning. And what that taught me is that my wife's body is perfect. She doesn't need drugs, she doesn't need pills, she doesn't need shots for all this stuff. Her body just needs to be understood. And if we can understand her fertility, then instead of suppressing it with chemicals to conform to our desires, we conform our desires the perfect way her body has already been created. To me, this is authentic sexual liberation. And people say, okay, well, maybe the birth control pill can lead to cancer, and hormonal contraceptives are an abortifacient, and so we don't want to go there. But condom, I mean, what could be bad about a condom? We all learned from, like, I don't know, 7th grade biology, one sperm gets a woman pregnant, okay? What happens the other hundreds of millions that are introduced into a woman's body through one act of intercourse? It used to be believed that if they weren't successful in fertilizing the ovum, that they didn't really serve a purpose. And science has found that that's not true at all, that within a man's seminal fluids are dozens of biological ingredients that are absorbed through the woman's circulatory system and are found in her body, in her bloodstream within hours of intercourse. And after intercourse, the woman's white blood cells will scour the surface of her cervix, bringing the man's sperm proteins and DNA into her body, into her lymph nodes. Her immune system will learn to recognize the genetic type of that man's sperm. She develops a gradual antigen, or a gradual tolerance to the antigen of his semen. Now, she gets accustomed to him, these foreign bodies. If she becomes pregnant from his child later on, her immune system will actually recognize the genetic type of sperm that it absorbed into her uterus, match it with the genetic type of baby, and actually makes for an easier pregnancy. Her risk of preeclampsia is tripled if they use a barrier method of contraception, because that she is being deprived of this seminal nourishment. Now, this is in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And I was sitting on an airplane typing it into a book I was writing, and the woman leans over next to me. She's like, "Oh, what are you writing about?" I'm like, "Well," I said, "this is an epidemiologic study of contraception and preeclampsia." And she, "Oh, can I read it?" I showed her the paragraphs. And she's reading this, and she says, "You know what?" She said, "My husband," she said, "I know we just met, but I feel like I know you so well." She said, "We've been married for 10 years. We've used the condom between every one of our 3 kids." And she said, "Every pregnancy I had preeclampsia. How come they didn't teach this to us in marriage preparation class?" And so to me, some of the journals even say that if a man is using a barrier method of contraception with the woman, they're actually having unprotected intercourse because he is not protecting the woman with the beneficial effects of his semen. And to me, it's just like, maybe the gift of sexuality was authored by an omnipotent, all-knowing, all-loving God who's already created within a woman's body seasons of fertility and infertility. And there's no need to artificially block fertile times. We just need to work around that. And if we can do that, I mean, couples who use NFP have a divorce rate under 4%. Like, why are we resistant to such good news? We want everything else in our life to be natural, from our hairspray to our nail polish. Why not our own sexuality? And so all these people clamor, "Oh, sex is natural, sex is natural." Yeah, sex is natural. Why not just have natural sex? No screens, no contraceptives, just natural sex. The people who clamor for it the most are the least likely people to actually have it.
So the divorce rate is what? In some studies, 50%, or it's very high. You said 4% divorce rate for couples that are practicing natural or fertility awareness.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's not all causation. There is correlation there. Maybe the people who use natural family planning or fertility and awareness methods might be highly religious. Maybe they take their marriage more seriously. There could be that host of correlation reasons, but there is a causation piece there because it really requires you to be a team in terms of planning your family. It's not like, "Oh, the pill, that's your issue. You take your pills and we don't even discuss it." It's like, no, we're charting the fertility together. We're learning. I knew of one husband and his wife quit using contraception, switched to NFP, they're charting the cycle, and the husband's looking at the wife's chart and he says, that doesn't look right. I mean, I don't think this is supposed to be happening at that time in your cycle. I think they taught us something different. So they go to the doctor. He looks at the chart and he says, "Yeah, your husband's right. Something's off here, and I'd really like you to see a thyroid specialist today." And so they rushed her off to the thyroid specialist. He took a look. She had a cancerous tumor growing on her thyroid. They operated the next day and saved her life. If she was contracepting, she probably wouldn't even be alive today but because she had NFP, it was like her reproductive health chart was in her hands. And so as a team, they used that to save this woman's life. And so that's why even single women, I think, would benefit greatly from learning this. I know of college fertility and awareness clubs that are starting up where college girls are charting it, not as a contraceptive, but to learn about the greatness of your body. And they said it's been so liberating to understand and how much more reverence I have for my body. And, they even joke about it. They're like, wow, you look like you're ovulating today, because your appearance changes during ovulation. And another girl saying, yeah, I'm feeling kind of luteal today. Like, they're joking about this stuff because there's this freedom of understanding how my body works instead of suppressing it with synthetic sex hormones that are constantly convincing me I'm having a dozen miscarriages a year, which is what the pill does to a woman's brain, of thinking, now you're pregnant, now you're not, now you are, now you're not. Like every single month, her brain is being teased back and forth in and out of pregnancy because these synthetics. Can
you explain that to people who are listening? Because again, many people, if you're even a woman listening, it's likely that you were put on the pill as a teenager, probably for your acne or some heavy periods or some other condition.
Yeah. I mean, two questions there. One is that really the answer for these medical conditions? And then secondly, how does it actually work? Well, when the pill was being invented in the 50s, the doctor who was doing it was a Catholic doctor. And he knew, once they started testing the pill, they tested on poor people in Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And they had tested on the male pill and the female pill, because both exist. And so the male pill, they found that some of the side effects, men had a slight shrinkage in the testes. And so the guys were like, no pill for me. But then what happened to the girls? Well, 3 of them died. So they just readjusted the dosage and kept testing on the women. Obviously, in these developing countries where these women can't hire a high-powered attorney to sue the pharmaceutical company on their behalf, that's why they're testing on them as guinea pigs. And so they invented this pill, but they found out that when the woman goes on the pill, she doesn't have a period anymore. Because what it's doing is when the woman takes the pill, goes into the digestive system, enters the circulatory system, the synthetic sex hormones then go into her brain and tell her pituitary gland, you're pregnant. So that sends a signal down to her ovaries, well, if you're pregnant, you don't need to release eggs, and so she doesn't ovulate. But if you don't ovulate, then neither are you going to menstruate. And so these women just stopped having periods altogether. But the doctor knew, well, if we're going to sell this thing to the church, they're going to want it to seem natural, so she's still having her cycle, and women aren't going to feel normal just having their periods go away completely, so here's what we'll do. We'll give her 3.5 weeks of synthetic pregnancy hormone. So for 3.5 weeks, her brain will think she's pregnant. Then we'll withdraw the pregnancy hormones and give her a week of placebo, blank, or sugar pills. And then her brain will think, okay, I'm withdrawing from the pregnancy hormones, I'm having a miscarriage. And so she's not actually having a period, she's having what's called a withdrawal bleed. She's withdrawing from the pregnancy hormones, and then after those 7 pills are over, then bam, it's back to the next pack of pills. And she thinks, hey, this regulated my cycle. This regulated nothing. Your brain actually thinks it's pregnant 12 times a year. Your breasts think that they should start developing breast milk 12 times a year, and then it gets shut down and turned off and shut down and turned off. And you share this with women and they're like, whoa, maybe that explains the weight gain, the mood swings, the hair loss, the depression, like all these other things that can sometimes come with pregnancy. And so telling girls, oh, you got acne, take the pill. Do you have endometriosis? Take the pill. Do you have ovarian cysts? Take the pill. Do you have a bad hair day? Take the pill. They give it out like candy. 4 doctors in a row told my wife she needs the pill for medical reasons. And there's nothing ethically wrong for being on it for that, but we knew about these side effects. I asked a world-renowned gynecologist, how many girls need the pill for medical reasons? He said, thankfully, virtually none. We've got all the treatments of medicine today. He said, it's just lazy gynecology, because what you're treating there are symptoms instead of treating a disease. It's like if you had a migraine every day and I just gave you another Tylenol, another Tylenol, another Tylenol. How's your headache? Well, it's gone now, after the Tylenol. Good, you're all better. Where's this all coming from? Like, where's the root of this? And the pill as lazy gynecology is just treating symptoms, not the underlying causes. And so things like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndromes, irregular cycle, heavy bleeding, this stuff can all be taken care of now without recourse to the pill. And so this is good news. You don't need these potent synthetic carcinogenic sex hormones to take care of that stuff. And yeah, it might seem like the symptom went away, but it's almost like if you've got a leak in the ceiling, and I'm like, oh, I can fix that. So I just go out to the main artery of water into your property and I just shut off water to the entire block here. I stopped the leak. Yeah, but now the toilets don't work. Now this doesn't work, that doesn't work. That's what we're doing by giving women these potent sex hormones to treat something that might have a nutritional answer. Maybe she needs a little bit more progesterone in her cycle. Maybe she's has an eating disorder, and because the fat of the body stores the hormones, she can't have a regular cycle if she doesn't have a healthy balance of fat. Like, let's do a little bit more homework so we can actually take care of the full woman instead of just throwing them on more packs of pills.
Wow, it's lazy gynecology, but it's also a big industry. It's a pharmaceutical industry that is selling these drugs and making a whole generations of women dependent on them, thinking that they need them. So the solution you mentioned, instead of sex ed as it's called, Kinsey being the godfather of it, we need to do actual relationship education and human sexuality education. How do we, in addition to women deserving to know how their bodies work and their fertility, men respecting that, understanding their own fertility, respecting each other's bodies and whole persons, not just their physical biology, but their whole persons, what does it look like to encourage a generation to embrace marriage? To see, because marriage rates are falling, you know this, you're involved with young people every day. We talked a little bit about why that is. How do we heal that?
Yeah, I think we've got to tap into, like, what is it you really desire? Like, do you really desire just a long-term cohabiting relationship with the guy who still might leave a couple years from now? I mean, my wife had a cousin, and he was cohabiting with his girlfriend for 7 years, and then she became pregnant, and then he said, I'm not ready for this level of commitment, and he left. After cohabiting for 7 years. He would take his pleasure, but he would not take his responsibility. And I think that a hookup culture is very beneficial for a guy like that, who just, wants the availability of different partners without having to settle down and man up. But what about the poor woman holding the baggage of the sexual revolution? But even that guy, I don't think that's what he really wants at the end of the day. I mean, how do you go to bed at night knowing, like, hey, I'm a good man. There's my ex-girlfriend changing diapers at 3 o'clock in the morning while I'm throwing darts with the guys at a bar. Like, you really putting your head to sleep on your pillow at night thinking you're living as you should? And so I don't think that's what we even want. And so when I talk to the young people, I remember meeting one girl and she said, I'm thinking of giving away my virginity to this boy. And I'm tempted to jump in and kind of give her all this advice, but I didn't. And I just said, why? And she said, I don't know. I'm like, no, you're not allowed to say, I don't know. Why do you want to give that gift of your virginity to that boy? And she thought about it and she said, I want to feel wanted. And I said, that's a really good, honest answer. I said, do you think he wants you? And she said, oh, I know he wants me. I'm like, no. Do you really think he wants you? She thought about it and she's like, no. I go, what do you think he wants? She said, he just wants sex. I go, is that all you want? She's like, no. I'm going to break up with him tomorrow. I'm going to send him a text message right now. I'm like, you go, girl. Like, I didn't tell her to do a thing. All I did was ask the right questions. And so I think we got to start asking these questions. Like, what is it you really ache for? Do you want a love that's like free, total, faithful, life-giving? That's marriage. That's the wedding vows. And when you make love to someone, those are the wedding vows made flesh, that you're speaking that in and through your body. And so when a husband and a wife make love, they're speaking the truth to each other. I give myself completely to you. I am all yours. But sex outside of marriage is sexually dishonest. You're making a lie in the language of your body. I remember seeing one movie where this guy sleeps with Cameron Diaz, and afterwards she said, don't you know when you make love to a woman, your body makes a promise to her whether you do or not. And the promise of sex is, I'm completely yours. And I think what we want is this total gift of self. And so the idea of marriage and premarital sex is that the total gift of the body, which is sex, should correspond to the total gift of the person, which is marriage. And so, yes, make a total gift of yourself, but don't hold back. Don't make it alone. Make it a free, total, faithful, life-giving gift. I think this is what people want. It's just that they're afraid that that might not be realistic because of the relationships that they've seen. So we need to instill real faith in marriage, real hope in that institution so they can have true love.
Let's say theoretically that President Joe Biden had a dramatic change of heart and decided that he wanted to fight to keep sex within marriage in American life and wanted to use public policy to do that. And so he decided to appoint you, Jason Evert, the lead czar on Sex Within Marriage Initiative, okay? And he gave you $1 trillion, $1 trillion, because he believes so much that this would help eradicate abortions, that this would help make the American family stronger, that this would improve the economy long term because of a lot of different consequences there. What would you do with $1 trillion to work to put sex back within marriage?
Yeah, well, I would say, Mr. President, I always knew deep down you're a good Catholic. So I'm glad it's finally manifesting itself. I believe that primary sex educators are not the schools. It's not the government. It's not the teachers. It's not even the priests, the pastors. It's the parents. They're the primary sex educators of their children. We need to empower the parents to teach the kids this virtue. And obviously, a lot easier said than done. And it needs to be a team effort. We need to go into the schools and unplug the public policy that's in there right now that's corroding the family when it comes to giving just millions and millions into Planned Parenthood, sex education, and drag queen story hours.
Okay, so you don't just have $1 trillion. You have $1 trillion plus whatever hundreds of millions are being spent on sex education right now in public schools. So what does it look like? Is there a public policy solution in part, or what would it look like even beyond that, to empower parents to be the sex educators and the relationship educators, the human sexuality educators of their kids? Yeah,
obviously it'd be a major project. You'd obviously have the media influence of what could be spent there, public awareness campaigns of the goodness of marriage, of building up fatherhood, so that every time you see fatherhood on the TV isn't some buffoon of a dad who's either a deadbeat dad checked out or Homer Simpson's. Like, we could reintroduce what fatherhood is supposed to look like in the family. And so there can be public awareness campaigns of that. Within the schools, you could have age-appropriate education in human love, meaning you can start in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, whatever. Not birds and the bees stuff. I want to respect and protect their innocence, but just that the marriage is a noble institution. It is a good. Teaching the kids what self-respect looks like, reintroducing love into human love, of like, what is it supposed to look like, so that way and this isn't about handing out catechisms in all the public schools in America. This is about introducing love into human sexuality, because what we've done is essentially divorce love out of the curriculum. We can't even talk about that.
What is love? What do you mean by love?
That's the most important thing. Love is an act of the will that consists of preferring the good of the other to the good of yourself. Instead of, I love me and I want you, it's I love you and I want what's best for you. It's I recognize you as a good instead of seeing you as a good for me. I want what's best for you. And so it's a very simple idea. Loving is willing the good of the other. And so let's take that definition of love, very simple definition, and introduce that into human sexuality. If I'm a 16-year-old boy, am I doing what's best for my girlfriend by sleeping with her? Abstinence is actually a greater expression of love than making love, because you're doing what's best for her and not just what feels good in the moment. And for a boy, he might say, look, I'm tempted to do that stuff, but I understand through this education that I've received that wouldn't actually be what's best for you. And so I'm going to say no to that, even though I do desire that. I am tempted to that, but I want to do what's best for you. I mean, wouldn't the girls stand up and applaud this of like, wow, they're actually being taught how to be gentlemen? I meet so many adolescent girls who are declaring themselves asexual. It's like, how on earth could you blame the poor girl when she's raised in this pornified culture of just like, my goodness. I was at a junior high and a bunch of 7th grade girls came up all identifying is lesbian, and they're 12 years old, and I started talking to them, and none of them were actually erotically attracted to the 8th grade girls. They just thought the 8th grade boys were disgusting, which of course we know they are. And so like, instead of like shaming the girl, I really tried to tap into like, this is a protective mechanism, because what you've seen of human sexuality is appalling, and it's very right for you to recoil from that. And so we got to be in the schools with programs that are age appropriate, reintroducing human love into the curriculum instead of just giving them risk reduction strategies on how to avoid HPV by doing this or that. Like, no, we need, and this isn't about religious education. It's about a truly human education. But then the schools is only one piece. Obviously, we've got to create public policies in place that reward families for staying together, that incentivize them, and make it a lot more challenging for men, as I said, to take their pleasure without taking the responsibility of just being like, well, that's sorry, it's your problem. You can either pay for the abortion, you can pay for the diapers, I'm out of here. Okay, well, how is the government stepping into that situation? Now, I'm not in favor of gigantic government to solve all of our problems, but we have a gigantic source of revenue that could be used. And if it could be directed to building up the family, because that's the key, is the family. That's where we need to invest the money, is the family, because the family is under attack right now so much because the family is the weapon. That's why it's under attack. It's like watch that Tom Cruise Top Gun Maverick movie with my kids a little while ago. And the whole theme of the movie is they need to get to that one weapon and drop all the bombs on that one weapon. That the whole destination, the whole point of the attack is that one thing, because it's the weapon. And I think the family is the weapon right now. And that's why it's under such attack. It's G.K. Chesterton said the family is a cell of resistance to oppression. And so we've got to do everything we do as a culture. If we can keep that father as a part of the family, and so what did we say earlier? 70% of unwed teen pregnancies, the girl's coming from a fatherless home. What if we just did that? What if we could just create policies that help the dad to stay in the home and give him education on what being a father looks like, give him more positive role models, public service announcements. I mean, there's a lot that could be done, but to me, the bulk would need to be focused on building up and protecting the family.
What's your message to women in particular? Because a lot of this is about men need to man up and we need better fathers, and all that is 100% true. But the large majority of divorces are initiated by women. And, I don't think women are at large victims. There are certainly women who are victims, and many of these divorces may be due to abuse, and in that situation, separation may be the right decision. It is the right decision, of course. But what would you say to divorces, women who are divorcing, or just kind of the mentality, and I would say feminist ideology, one of its negative consequences is this sense that, women in some ways can do no wrong, and it's always the men that do the wrong. So what would you say to that? Because I see this even in some conservative circles. It's sort of like women are above reproach, men are always the bad guy, and you see this reflected too in divorce, where it's not just they're saying it's abuse, the reason I'm divorcing, which would be a reason to divorce, but it's because of other reasons beyond that.
No, I think we need to be careful to balance things out, because if you come in as like the guys are the bad guys and the women are the poor helpless victims, that doesn't help the women. It does not empower them to just cure them of any culpability in this whole thing. It's like, no, this takes two people to make a marriage work. Obviously it takes one person to ruin a marriage, but it takes two people to make that thing succeed. And so what can she do to keep her marriage together? Well, one thing I think we need to do is help people understand that marriage preparation is not something you do 6 months before your wedding. That's what we've always viewed marriage prep as. Oh, we're getting married in 6 months, we better get married. No, marriage preparation needs to begin at birth. Because if you're waiting till 6 months before you get married to prepare for that life together, that's triage. Like, that is a last ditch effort to get the house in order. We need to be looking at more remote marriage preparation. Junior high for these girls. How do you know if a guy really loves you? What do you really want in a spouse? What do you want in a future marriage? And not only what do you want, like, are you those things? Like, are you aspiring for all these ideals in somebody else and virtues that you aren't even practicing in your own life? And so a friend of mine says, become the woman of your dreams and you'll attract the man of your dreams. And so instead of always finding like, where's that perfect guy out there for me? Is he the one? Is he the one? Is he the one? Like, no, that's not the right approach. Because imagine if you had one person that really spent their single years growing in the virtues and perfection, and there's another person out there who just spent their time looking for the perfect person. And these two people met. At first, it would seem to go really well. Like, wow, this person wanted someone who's perfect, and this person worked on being perfect, and they got married. It wouldn't take long before a very painful realization set in that one of them did not invest the time to really develop themselves in the virtue and wanted more of a host to attach to. And so what do you do? What do you say?
I mean, that's a whole other topic that deserves its own multiple podcasts. But for those listening who are maybe in that situation where they're like, okay, I was the host that got attached to, in this situation, and they're dealing with a spouse that, there's a lot of problems. Maybe they feel they married a narcissist. What do you do? I know these things are complex and different cases are different, but do you have any general pointers? Yeah. Well, for one, get help, get community. Don't try to fight this thing on your own. You need to, even if your partner is not willing to go to counseling with you, you need to be going to counseling. You need to be able, because if you're in a relationship that's toxic with someone that perhaps on like severe personality disorders of narcissism, borderline personality disorder, things like that, there's typically a lot of gaslighting going on of the invalidation of your feelings and your thoughts and your experiences. And you start to think like, well, maybe I am too emotionally demanding. Like maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I did misremember all of those instances of abuse. But if you've got someone in your life, a good therapist, counselor, family member, that you're in close communication with, you're not going to doubt your reality as much. And you're going to be able to keep your head about you instead of just wasting perhaps years of your life in a relationship with this person that was never even ready to give of themselves. Which also means before marriage, get your junk together.
Like, if you need counseling, you owe it to your future spouse and kids to deal with your junk before you get married, instead of just sweeping it under the rug and thinking marriage is going to be a car wash. Because a lot of people do that. I mean, good Christians, they over-spiritualize the discernment process. And they think, well, he has a Bible, I have the same Bible. You know, that's great, but there's a lot of other issues.
We met on my favorite feast day.
Yeah, exactly. She has a brown scapular, I have a brown scapular. It's like...
Or God told me, you know. I mean, listen to God, but it's very rare God will literally tell you to marry someone, because in part the other person has to agree, and also you need to use your reason to discern, is this prudent?
Yeah, and so don't make the decision alone. I mean, if you look at any government leader, they typically have a cabinet of advisors that give them advice on foreign diplomacy, economic affairs, military intelligence, education. And if they know how to listen well, they'll govern wisely. But if they're full of hubris, like, no, I got this, it's just going to drive the country into the ground. Same thing in relationships. If it's just her and me against the whole world, it's just like, good luck with that. You got to, hey, mom, dad, what do you think about her? Asking your pastor, asking your good friends. And if they all are saying, hey, there's some red flags here, you would do well to listen to that. Whereas if you're having questions, but are like, no, I think this is a really good deal, these are just bumps in the road, they're going to happen, it'll be balanced out if you've got that sounding board. And so if you're in a difficult situation, just make sure you've got that outside help, and don't let your partner guilt you into getting that help, of thinking that you're somehow being unfaithful to them by going for emotional support elsewhere. You need it and you deserve it.
This is so good, and I've got just a couple more questions, and I'm sure people are going to want to learn a lot more about your work because it's phenomenal. We're in the post-Roe v. Wade world. Roe has fallen. There's 13 states that have banned abortion now. They estimate that there are 24,000 children whose lives were directly saved because of the overruling Roe v. Wade. So 24,000 souls that are alive today because of that Supreme Court ruling. What do you think the next 50 years look like to achieve not just total legal protection for the preborn, because we want to ban abortion, but also that cultural shift that's needed, the revival of marriage, the revival of love in relationships instead of use. What do you think the next 50 years are going to look like?
I would love to see pro-life and pro-love come together, where we're not working in our silos as much as we are, because everybody's kind of running off doing their own good thing, but there's not enough synergy between the missions that are out there. And so I think if pro-life is ever really going to succeed, and we saw this big victory in terms of the supply of abortion being limited, but has it changed the demand for abortion at all? It hasn't. We've got to do more educational reforms, more healing within the family, more marriage preparation. And if we could just team up the pro-life and the pro-love movements, I think we're going to see much greater victories than we have in this past year. But we just can't do it alone and living in our own little silos. We've just got to team up. And it almost seemed like evangelical Christians, for the most part, were the front runners in the abstinence movement, whereas a lot of the Catholics were doing more of the pro-life movement, the crisis pregnancy centers. And it's not an all or nothing, but it seemed like we were working in these different fields doing so much of the similar work. But what if we could kind of team up together? Almost like evangelicals and Catholics in general need to be teaming up more together. But if we could bring together the pro-life and the pro-love movements, I think that's the recipe for success heading forward. Well,
I know it's part of Live Action's strategy at this time and moving forward to fight for the pro-life, pro-love side as we fight for the pro-life side, because if we have broken relationships, we're going to have broken culture, and we're going to have abortion. We're going to have that abortion crisis. How can people find more of your work, Jason, and follow you? Well, our website is chastity.com. So CHASTITY.com. That's where we've got the website. We have a podcast called Lust is Boring. We also have Instagram, which is just my name, Jason Evert. Twitter, my name, Jason Evert. We had a Facebook, but after I came out with a book recently on gender, it got hacked. Whoa. And so we lost all 125,000 subscribers, and someone has hacked it. And for like 5 months, we haven't gotten it back from Facebook yet. And so I expected that to come. Well, send your stuff to us on Live Action. We'd love to post it. Oh, yeah, thank you. So we've got but we do have Twitter, Instagram, and chastity.com. So people can connect with us there. Resources, the seminars, we're on YouTube as well. And just share the resources, because it's good news. And you'd find that young people especially are remarkably receptive to the message of chastity. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to Kristalina for your beautiful, beautiful work. It's so needed. And I know in some ways you've been doing it 25 years, but you have a ton of work in front of you, beautiful work in front of you. So thank you for persevering and for leading us. Thank you, Lila.